So when stuff hits the fan, you better be ready. You better have a garden. And I have the pleasure of being at the survivalgardener.com's very own David the Good's residence homestead with all of the homeschooling children in the background. David, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
All right, so there's a lot of perennial action here.
Yeah, and this isn't the prettiest time of year to see everything because we're going into dormancy. We're kind of right on the edge between the tropics and the temperate zone here. And so things are going to sleep, like the peaches are going to sleep, mulberries going to sleep. But this is an exciting time of year because the citrus is coming in. There's a lot of roots in the ground we can dig up. So yeah, this is a food forest. 5 years in the making, and it's gotten to be pretty darn productive. A lot better than the grass that was here before.
So before you came here, there was just lawns, grass, typical turf.
This was grass and weeds. It was real patchy and sandy, ugly looking, typical Florida yard. And you know, there were some trees here. We took out a few of the oak trees that were like time bombs and had rotten bottoms on them and looking like they were gonna fall over. And then we started planting fruit trees. But what we found was the fruit trees were not really all that happy at first, so we started dumping a lot of mulch on the ground and then adding more and more species. And I mean, the more stuff you pack in together, it's kind of counterintuitive, but the better it seems to do because it's got a community going on of living plants. So there's a lot in here. There's some natives. There's roots in the ground. Like, you know, we've got arrowroot down here, which is just an excellent starch and very digestible. Native berry, Simpson stopper, this is called. This is
sorrel.
Yeah, Florida cranberry or Jamaican sorrel. This makes the best cranberry sauce that you have ever had. It doesn't quite have the bitterness of regular cranberries. My wife makes cranberry sauce every holiday season out of it, Thanksgiving and Christmas. And
interesting. I've never heard of it used that way.
You can eat the leaves like it tastes like a lot like a Caesar salad already because they're tart, almost like a little bit of a vinegar flavor to them. They're delicious. You just throw a few of them in, it's like instant salad.
Huh. Yeah, I've seen sorrel around. I've never heard of them eating the leaves or, you know, a lot of these plants we take for granted you can actually eat the leaves of.
Yeah, like these sweet potatoes that are down here, these have naturalized. I planted sweet potatoes a few years ago and then they've just taken over as a ground cover. They were a lot denser earlier in the year. They've died back a little bit, but there's sweet potatoes under here all over the place.
Now
you can eat the leaves too.
You can eat sweet potato leaves?
Absolutely. Just stir fry them or cook them like spinach. Very nice medium green flavor, and they're good for you.
So sweet potatoes are a good example of a very productive perennial in this area, are they not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, originally they are a perennial down in South America where they come from, and wherever they spread here, they make more roots. They make roots very randomly, so it actually, you know, I don't really know where I'm going to find roots. I'd like to start pulling them up and show some roots off, but sometimes it's a hunt, you know?
Yeah, it's random.
They are down there.
I've seen pretty big ones grown.
Right, and actually here's the true yams growing up here. These are actual African yams. I pulled one of these up yesterday that I can show you that's on my back porch. And this is, you know, sweet potatoes are called yams, but they're not actually yams. Those are real yams, which make a big white root. It's a lot like just like a white potato.
Is that the one you were telling me about on the radio show?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
so it's kind of like an air potato.
Yeah, there's multiple species. Some of the species they threw on the invasive species list, and some of them they didn't.
But so, these are edible. Unlike that, we have a pretty pesky air potato here. What's the Latin name for that?
That is Dioscorea bulbifera, and that one is usually toxic. There's one or two cultivars that have been bred that are non-toxic, but the ones you find in the wild are almost invariably toxic. They'll make you go sterile. They'll cause all kinds of stomach upset. They're kind of nasty. They're a true yam, but the edible ones, basically they make potatoes that hang in the air that you can eat. But you'll see the potatoes hanging in the wild here, and the University of Florida's been trying to get rid of them because they cover and choke out sections of the woods.
Right.
Those you can't eat, unfortunately, but there are cousins you can.
Interesting. Well, folks, if you think that this stuff just happened overnight, you got another thing coming. This takes time. Now, these things that are here year after year, also known as perennials, are really fruitful and really productive for your garden. And it's the type of thing that you're going to rely on consistently. You know, the things like tomatoes and all of those other crops, they're great, but there's something to be said about a natural symbiotic food forest that comes and produces year after year after year.
Exactly. I mean, it's a great prepper garden because most people would see this and go, this guy's insane, his yard's a terrible mess. They wouldn't think, oh wow, look at all those, you know, nice rows of edible plants. They
That's a
don't see it
great
as
point.
edibles.
Right, so it
You know?
camouflages. So when the stuff hits the fan and people are, yes, ladies and gentlemen, people are going to go and raid your property and try to steal your food. When that time comes, you know, you look at this and to the untrained eye, it looks like weeds.
Right, exactly. And it's unfortunate. You could make this look a lot prettier. You know, maybe you could make it look like edible landscaping. I was more interested in just making Florida turn back into forest again.
Hey, who wants to put a target on their back?
Right.
Most of the viewers are very much aware of the type of scenario where you're going to want to be low profile. You're going to want to be able to camouflage and still produce the food to eat that you'll need to eat.
This here is a berry from Japan. It also fixes its own nitrogen, which means it's got a symbiotic relationship with certain nitrogen-fixing bacteria. It's called a gummy berry, and it makes little edible fruit in the spring. Nobody
Okay.
knows what that is.
I've never seen it.
That's a plum tree there that's gone to sleep.
This is the time of year as well, folks, to plant your fruit trees, if I'm not mistaken. You get buy them, the bare root trees, the deciduous
Absolutely.
trees. It's a great time to plant them.
This is a loquat tree. It's also called a Japanese plum.
Right.
And it's going crazy. This is one of the easiest fruit trees to grow. You dry the fruit, they taste a lot like a dried apricot. They're kind of a fuzzy yellow or orange fruit. There are improved varieties too that have great big fruit on them, but they're hard to find. This tree went into production last year, and it's one of the earliest fruits we get. We've actually got
Right.
fruit through almost the entire year. This is the first one that comes in February, March.
Loquats are pretty cool, and they keep coming up in clusters. If I'm not mistaken, the
yeah.
ones that I have where near us, they just keep popping up, and it looks like a big bush of them after a while because they tend to
They're
continue to
monsters.
propagate
Yeah.
near each other.
They're great. This is a fig.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
started this fig from a cutting. It was a foot tall when I put it in, and I found that if you actually start small trees in place in your yard, either from seeds or from cuttings, they don't do that roots thing going around inside of the pot where they get choked. You know, you can buy a fruit tree that's been sitting in a pot for a year or two and plant it, and it takes the tree a couple of years to be like, oh, I have ground, and to start putting its roots out. This one went right in the ground, so about 3 years ago, you know, this was a little teeny stick, and it's grown like crazy, whereas I've planted some that I got from pots and transplanted this big because I thought I was going to save time, and they still look sad.
Yeah, from what I understand, that's another I can't even think here. Another reason to buy deciduous bare root trees because they have the same
Yes.
sort of thing.
Yeah. And don't put anything in the ground when you plant them. Just put them right in the soil. A lot of people will be like, oh, I got to dump in a bunch of compost. I knew a guy, he's like, I put in a bag of Miracle Grow underneath it so it finds the nutrients. Okay, you don't have to do that. What you actually want to do is have the plant have a little bit of stress on the roots so it goes, I need to go find water and nutrition, and the roots will spread further. If you put a bunch of stuff right under the tree, it'll put its roots down there and go, I'm just going to stay here at the all-you-can-eat buffet. And then when that runs out, the tree is kind of going, you know, struggling along. This is root beer plant.
Right, sarsaparilla.
Yeah,
No?
and it's actually got the same as the sarsaparilla people are familiar with, but that one actually comes from the sassafras tree. This also has sarsaparilla in it.
And it smells like root beer.
Smells just like root beer. It makes an awesome tea. My wife made a gallon of root beer tea last night for the kids.
Oh, do they love it?
They love it. They love it. It's really good. These are tangerines. Citrus is not the safest thing to plant in Florida anymore because it tends to die on you. Because they've been growing citrus in monoculture for so long that every disease in the world has built up here. And
So all the cankers and
cankers, and particularly greening, is the one. They don't have any cure for the virus. So if you plant a citrus tree in your yard, just be aware that probably it's going to be dead in 5 years.
and don't forget the citrus AIDS. I mean, that's a big one.
That's it. Yeah, that's
The homosexual citrus, all of that.
Yep. I love citrus, but it's just not trustworthy anymore, unfortunately.
You gotta watch out.
This is a great plant. This is Mexican tree spinach. This is
Why's it gotta be Mexican?
hey,
Don't tell Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Mexican tree spinach.
Yeah, well, I did build a wall around this property.
Did you?
Yeah, see the fencing here? Yeah. No, this is a great plant. You can cut these leaves off and boil them for 10 minutes, and then they're edible. They're really like.
Does it taste good?
Yes, like a very good collard green type of a sweet, chewy. Makes a really good lasagna, particularly for people that are trying to cut carbs
Because just because you can eat something doesn't mean that you're going to want to eat it. So that's another survival component people seem to forget is
Actually,
yes.
plant something you want to eat.
Right. Yeah. Yes, you can plant anything and eat a lot of things, but you want to make sure your appetite is stimulated with the crops you're growing.
We're going to graft in some hot pockets onto some of these.
Really?
Yeah. So.
And I assume this is all GMO.
Yeah, absolutely GMO. Because
Okay.
that's the only way to grow food these days.
Right.
Here we've got another fig. This one really did awesome because we had a burn pile here, and then I piled up a ton of leaves and sticks. You can still see some of the remnants of the sticks down there. It loves that organic matter in the soil, and it was a 1 foot tall cutting I stuck in. We got a lot of figs on it earlier.
We had tons of figs this year at our spot.
I'll show you. This branch here I grafted in.
Oh, there's a fig on the plant.
Yep.
Look at that.
It's a remaining fig. This I grafted in right here in February of this year from a really productive variety of fig. I thought I'll change a couple of branches and see what happens.
So you grafted a branch of a different variety onto this tree.
This is a yellow-green fig with a pink interior. This is a purple fig when these finish up.
How about
They're
that?
very good. So yeah, it's pretty cool. You can, if you have a tree that you don't like, particularly a fruit tree, a lot of people go, oh, I had this tree, it had sour oranges, so I cut it down. Like, don't do that. It might have 20 foot of roots in the ground. If you graft on top of it, it will produce fruit probably the next year because it's feeding off that massive root system. If you cut it down and decide to plant another tree, you're gonna have to wait 4 or 5 years for it to get that root system and feel like it's gonna produce. This tree was already really kicking, so it made figs the same year I grafted it in.
Wow,
so,
that's incredible.
So don't cut your trees down if you don't like them. I tell the same people the same thing. You start a bunch of trees from seed and they say, oh, you don't know if it's going to be a good fruit tree. Well, if it's not a good fruit tree, you don't have anything to lose. Once it's got a good root system, cut the top, put in a new top, change the top of the tree with grafting. It's just like transplanting right on top of it. And if the tree really ends up terrible and you got too many of them in your yard, you can always use them in the smoker or something like that. It's not a loss. The seeds don't cost you anything. Got gingers here in the ground.
Yep. Again, at the time of year that it is, these are not dying, folks.
No,
they're
going
just
to sleep.
They're taking a little rest.
This is turmeric, which is a strong anti-cancer.
Sure.
It's another type of ginger. Grows really well here. If I was to dig down in the ground here, you could see there's your turmeric.
Now,
Right there.
if I was to take this root that you just digged up and plant it at my property,
take them.
They would come up?
They will. They'll grow. They won't come up until June. Just bury them about 4 inches deep in the shade, and just remember it's there because you'll think it's never coming up again. They're
That's the
dormant
one
about
problem.
6 months of the year.
Okay.
And then they're awake the other 6.
So cool. Literally, you just take what he dug up and you bury it in the ground and you'll have turmeric growing.
Yeah, and turmeric is really expensive per pound.
Sure,
it's
sure.
Really organic and all that stuff. If you go to the grocery store and you got some good looking turmeric roots you find there, plant them at this time of the year,
right,
you'll have turmeric. It usually takes 2 years and then you'll get a big clump of root. Take it out of the ground when it goes to sleep around this time of year, throw a piece back in, it'll do the same thing over again. And
very cool.
That's where you get your curry, yellow and curry from.
Nice.
There's another beautiful ginger here. This one's been in the ground a couple of years. You can see how big it is.
Now there's different varieties of ginger. Our mutual friend Joe has been telling me a little bit about it. Some are edible. Some have what's called soap ginger, like a cone on them.
Yep. This was a soap ginger. The cone here is
so it's been dried up here, but this
dried up.
basically when this is nice and plump and red, you squeeze it and it's got some beautiful stuff in there.
It smells great. It's good for your hair. It's good for your skin, cracked skin, that sort of thing. You come out here and squeeze it. It's like a little soap dispenser, and it sits there for about 2 or 3 months before it dries up.
The kids love it too.
Okay,
They
cool.
just love it. My son, I remember the first time he figured it out, and he came and gave himself a shower, essentially, with the juice from the soap ginger.
Here, crush this and smell that.
Is that a... Is that... I'm smelling a lime.
It's not exactly what you expect. This is a bay.
Oh, this is a
And
bay
it's
leaf.
got that
Okay.
pungent, a little bit citrusy. This is one of our native ones. There's a few native
I
varieties.
wanted to say it was a bay leaf, but it seems
It doesn't smell
little bit more-
exactly. It's not the true bay,
Right.
like the Laurus nobilis. This is one of our other ones. This is either red bay or swamp bay or whatever.
okay. Yeah, that was my first inclination, but it smelled real citrusy compared to some of the other bays.
Here we've got kumquat. This is one of the only citrus you can eat the skin and the fruit. The skin is sweet.
Show us what
eat
you
it.
mean.
Oh, let's see if we find one that looks pretty here. There's some on the ground here. It looks pretty good.
So,
You eat the whole thing. The skin's kind of thin. And it's sweet. It tastes just like marmalade. It's like the marmalade tree.
wow.
Now there are sour ones too, where the skin is actually sweet, the inside is tart. It's delicious. Here, you gotta try it.
Wow, skin and all.
The whole thing. And this is a moringa here.
Okay.
I call that the miracle tree. It's one of the most nutritious things on the planet. Loaded with nutrition. And you skim these leaves off, you make tea out of them when you're sick. Put them in your cooking. I saute them with my scrambled eggs for breakfast. I've got these trees all over the yard. There's one here that looks kind of illegal. This is cassava. Or yucca, which is where you get fried yucca root from. These are date palms. I started these from seeds and planted them. Out here's a couple of them.
Will they actually produce fruit at some point?
The problem here is that it's so humid.
Yeah.
They tend to start to produce fruit and then they drop it. But I figure, it's started in the ground from seed. It may be possible to actually breed them. You don't really know. This is a pear here. We're in a great place because you can grow pears and you can grow citrus.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen some pear production here that's pretty outrageous.
Got bananas and these are velvet beans.
Yeah, I have a problem with my colon. I hear that this might help. Is that true?
Don't know. I know that it's got L-dopa in it, which is dopamine precursor, and it's also got serious testosterone boosting power to it.
Right.
So weightlifters will take it and give them a kick.
Yeah, so I don't actually have a problem with my colon, but I hear that it helps with male-related issues that you may have.
Awesome stuff.
Your prostate, that's the one I was
Prostate.
trying to think of.
And maybe I don't know. I haven't heard that, but I don't think there's such a thing as too much testosterone.
Too much. Well, you never know unless you're transitioning. That might be an issue.
So here there's another pear tree here. That's the pollinator to this one. And as you see, step past the little fig here. On the ground, I have dropped all of these sunflower stems. These giant, crazy looking sunflowers. They were really in bloom last month. They've pretty much tapped out now. They are really good at accumulating nutrients from the ground. So when you chop them up and drop them onto the ground, it acts as mulch and as compost and as fertilizer for the plants. So instead of having to buy fertilizer, I grow plants that will pull up nutrition from the ground, and then I chop them and drop them in the fall, cover the ground and let them go. And you just come out here with a machete a couple of times a year and cut them down. They get too out of control, they start shading things, just there you go.
Cool.
So there's probably about 100 fruit trees scattered around my yard. And
Looks
then
like
there's
somebody
my-
harvested a hand of bananas fairly recently.
This is a variety that nobody could tell me if it was edible or not. It looks like those bananas aren't going to get much bigger.
Okay.
It's probably just an ornamental, but again, just anytime I can pack in another species, I figure why not? Doesn't hurt anything.
And as you can see, the butterflies love the flowers. You have pollination, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah, and I like to, think in terms of wildflowers and other plants that are going to bring in pollinators, because the more pollinator plants you have, the more constant bee, wasp, butterfly, moth activities going on, the higher your fruit set is going to be on the other trees. So you get some beauty here, but somebody that collected ornamental plants gave me some bits and pieces, and I just kind of stuffed them in. Now, these are apples. These two little ones here. We've got about 5 different varieties grafted onto the apples. Also did that in the spring. They're kind of going to sleep, but I label my grafts, put little tags on them so I know which varieties are going to do well in Florida and which aren't. This type seems to have picked up some sort of a disease, so it may or may not do well. It's hard to say, or it may just be going to sleep. Sometimes takes a few years to really figure out what's going to take and what's not. Doesn't cost anything though, just time. Take pieces of other people's apple trees and pop them in here and there. Graft here, graft here, graft here. A multi-headed, multi-apple tree. Let's see, what else can we show off? Nitrogen fixture, right there, and I guess we could go out back and look at a couple of the other trees, some other stuff.
All right, let's go check it out back. All right, here we go. Found some more citrus.
Right, couldn't bear to take you all the way to the backyard yet because there's more to show off, but this is Calamanda, and this is where you get the seasoning in Campari, the liqueur from Italy. Very sour. Sometimes they call it the Calamandan lime. When I was a kid, I used to eat them all the time out of my grandma's house. You peel them, the inside's like a tangerine, but it's super, super sour, like more sour than a lemon. The skin, again, is sweet, though, which is kind of interesting. It makes the best marmalade. When you add some sugar to this, it's like, flavor's incredible. Very much a seasoning citrus. And it's also very cold hardy.
So let me ask you something. Utilizing the food you grow, believe it or not, can, to somebody who's not disciplined and in the habit of doing so, become challenging. In other words, you're growing all of these edibles. Many of them are not your typical vegetable or green that you'll find at the grocery store. Walk me through the process of actually utilizing these things so that you're not falling on your habits of going to the grocery store or going out to dinner. Because to me, somebody who grew up in South Florida in the city,
right,
it sounds great on paper, but then when I actually go to the point of growing all these great things and it comes time for harvest, I find that I, more often than not, fall into old habits and don't fully utilize and consume these things that I'm trying to grow.
That's a terrible personal failing.
I know. I don't know how I sleep at night, but I share this with the viewers because I have a feeling, David,
most people are there. Yeah.
That a lot of people share this problem. And unless you're really getting in the habit and this is a consistent thing for you, I think it's probably not so odd that I suffer from this horrible issue that.
Not at all. It's not weird at all. And there's a reason that the book Square Foot Gardening is one of the most popular, or the most popular gardening books of all time, with over 2 million copies sold. It's because here's a 4-foot by 4-foot bed that's all planned out, and you plant exactly the plants you want to eat, and it's all perfect soil. And it's convenient and it's compartmentalized. It's an engineer designed a little garden for a backyard.
Right.
So people look at it and go, I understand that. When it comes to perennial vegetables like Mexican tree spinach or making your own marmalade, that's a little further out for a lot of people. So what I would say to the person who's not sure is to figure out what your favorite foods are, whether they're nuts or fruits or vegetables, and start with those first, and then add something interesting every once in a while. And if you get a chance to try foods that other people have, like the Mexican tree spinach, I ended up getting a lot of people interested in that plant after they tasted it. They're like, I don't know if I want it. You have to cook it first. And I said, yeah, you have to cook it first. Why do you have to cook it? I said, well, because it's got some cyanide in the leaves. So if you don't cook it, it's not good for you. So they're like, oh, it's poisonous. I said, well, you're not eating raw meat. I mean, you're not eating dry kidney beans. A lot of stuff takes a little bit of processing, but you've got to try it. And once you try it, man alive, that's so good. And because it's got a little cyanide in the leaves, the insects generally leave it alone too. So almost nothing touches it. You cook it, super nutritious and delicious, but you got to get used to, oh, I've got that thing growing in my yard, and do it. I set up a food forest project for my parents down in South Florida, and I planted this huge range of plants down there from the tropics. So their whole backyard is this beautiful swath of food forest, and it's lush and it's green year round. But then when I went down there, I saw my parents are still buying salads. And I said, look, you've got longevity spinach back here. You've got this spinach, this tropical leaf, that tropical leaf. They're like, well, we don't know what we can eat. And it's just easy to get a bagged salad. And it's like, yeah, I understand. But what they have found is that the fruit trees that I planted back there, such as star fruit, and they have a key lime tree in the backyard. They always use those because it's easy. They go pick it off the tree and it's something they like already. And they're working towards using the other ones. So,
fair enough.
It's
a work in progress.
They're eating a lot more out of their yard than they ever did before. Before there was nothing out of the yard to eat.
Right.
So and now they've got cherries off of the cherry tree in the front.
Cool.
Tropical cherry.
I mean, those are pretty intuitive, but I guess the short answer is start incorporating it more and more. Take baby steps, and the next thing you know, you'll become more and more accustomed to doing that.
Right, and if you try growing potatoes once and you're like, man, this is a lot of work, well, yeah, it's a lot of work. If you don't like it, plant something that grows better in your climate. I wrote a book, Totally Crazy Easy Florida Gardening, which lists a lot of the strange crops that I grow and how to use them and how to eat them and what they taste like, because this is not the climate for a lot of those Yankee vegetables that people are buying from the stores and they want to eat. So Idaho potatoes may not do all that well in Miami compared to growing African yams, which are just awesome and no work in Miami. So yeah, this is Boniato, which is it's a non-sweet variety of sweet potato from South America. It tastes a lot like a white potato, and it grows everywhere too. This is an edible palm, by the way. This is the Pindo palm, also called the wine palm or the jelly palm. The fruit tastes like a tart combination of coconut and pineapple. Makes the best jam that you have ever had in your life. You can eat it off the tree, but it's got a lot of fiber in it, so we usually just press the fibers out and make a syrup out of it. Sometimes we don't even add sugar to it and have it kind of a sweet sour syrup.
You're growing more illegal.
more cassava. I was always wondering if a drone flies over and they see my cassava plants, if they're gonna go, oh, look at those palmate leaves. I actually had the local police over at one point, not because of this, but they came through and I was like, I want you to see this plant. Some friends of mine.
And what did they say?
They're like, oh, what is that?
Yeah, right.
Well, what's that? I said, that's a hibiscus. Oh, what's that? Well, that's another hibiscus. Well, what's that? Well, that's quinoa. Okay.
Well, I mean, if we can digress for a moment and go on a rant about the police state, there's plenty of properties that have been raided for the appearance. In other words, in different city zones and whatnot. And I interviewed somebody on my show from Texas who had his entire food forest raided by the police. Okay. And what they did after that was just absolutely unbelievable. They came in and they mowed it all. So he oh yeah, it's one of the most horrific stories I've read about, simply because of their ignorance, simply because they want everyone to have a cookie cutter lawn and to fall in place with this system that is wasteful, unproductive, ugly. If you really think about it, this is far more attractive in my opinion.
Oh, the butterflies love it, the birds love it. We've had lizards and frogs and other species we've never seen in this area before that have shown up since we did it. This is much more of a nature integrated garden.
Wow.
These are yams. I actually took a tree. This is considered a trash tree. This tree that's growing here is a sweet gum. And the sweet gum tree was growing here, and I thought, you know what, I'll cut the top of it off and use it for a yam trellis. And the yams die back every year. The sweet gum starts to grow. Then the yams climb it again, and we get yams.
Cool.
It's a yam tree. Not a waste.
Another low quad here, I believe.
Yep, and this one's been grafted too. This is an improved variety that was grafted on top right here.
Very neat.
2 years ago. Actually, the original tree got killed by a string trimmer. A friend of mine helping me clean up some parts. We were gonna do a tour through, and he cut the bottom of the tree too far, so I took budwood off the top of that rare loquat and then grafted it in here to save the variety.
Nice.
Hey, why not? Bananas here.
Yeah, and for those of you keeping score at home, we are in north central Florida, which does have a hard freeze. However, we are able to grow some things that you might not expect, which brings me, in addition to some of the bananas that we just showed you, to this character right here, which is clearly an oddity in this climate that can be grown with some special care and attention. So,
Yep.
David, papaya.
Papaya. This is the south-facing wall of my house. Within
Okay.
a couple of feet of this wall, it's like Miami, and it does not freeze. So I've taken advantage of this wall. This is sugar cane, pineapple, papaya.
That's
And
the
then
pineapple.
If we come through here, this is a bit of a mess at the moment because we had a tree fall over. But I've got another guava here. This is a ponderosa lemon, which is the largest lemon in the world. Isn't that awesome?
That's the size of your head.
Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it?
Oh. Hold on here. Bob Tuskin Jr. is trying to come out. Come here, Bob Tuskin Jr. Are you being good?
And then here, by the wall, this is coffee, which will be told, anybody will tell you this is impossible to grow here. I grew this from a little seedling, and it lived through this last winter despite multiple nights below freezing.
All because of this microclimate
It's a
and the
microclimate.
south-facing wall.
This-
Hey, Bob Tuskin Jr., hang out with me for a minute. Are you okay?
No. I'm
Okay.
going back in.
All right, shut the door. I trust he's acclimating nicely with y'all. All right.
So this, these bananas here, you can see there's some huge bananas. Let me grab the stalk that I just pulled. Harvested this yesterday here in North Florida, where they say you can't grow bananas well. And these bananas were fed on gray water and produce fantastically. These will go inside and get hung up. Actually, they get hung up that way to ripen up. But that's pretty hefty. This is
That's a lot of food.
pretty good workout regimen here, and it's no work once the bananas come in. You know, these trees take care of themselves. Plus, they look beautiful and they shade this area.
That's awesome.
There's key limes back in there too. Everything's all packed in.
So,
It's quite a system.
So a lot of these things cannot be grown in this area, but if you understand these climates and permaculture and having different companion planting take place and so on and so
Right.
forth, you can actually grow a lot of these things that are unicorns, if you will, of this area.
Right. They tell you can't grow a key lime tree, but this is a key lime tree right here. And I never have to protect this key lime tree. As you can see, it's been tied back to the wall. And, you know, a real plant geek would recognize this vine that's growing on it. But
That is a... Hold on here. I know it. I just saw it over at Joe's place. Is that a... not a Suriname cherry. What is that?
No, it looks like Malabar spinach.
Right, it
By
looks
when
like
you're thinking
Malabar,
it.
right?
This is actually black pepper, which is where we get peppercorns from, which is a truly tropical plant. And it also lived through the winter, and it's kind of crawling its way back through here.
Awesome.
It's survived, and the key limes I don't have to protect. If I grew this key lime 20 feet that way,
It wouldn't have
it
made
would be dead. If
Yep.
originally, the first summer, I planted it right here, and I thought that having a plaza around it would be good and all that sort of stuff. Half of the tree froze off. The half next to the wall was all green. It looked like somebody painted a line down the middle of the tree and burned half of it.
Wow.
So I tied it back to the wall, and I packed this lemon in next to it too. And you know, you'll see aphids and pests on my plants, but they rarely cause much trouble.
So pest control is built in here with the diversity of things that you grow, essentially,
And
right?
This is not as pretty right now as it should be. I didn't plant any fall gardens. Normally this would all be cabbages and things, but I didn't.
So
put
back
anything
here is where you start to plant some of the non-perennial items.
Right, and yeah, these are white sweet potatoes down here in the ground. I was harvesting some sweet potatoes over there.
Let's talk about this
Last
guy for a
night.
moment. We had mention of this very handy tool on the show the other day when you came on.
Yeah, this is the Meadow Creature Broad Fork, and you know, for zombie defense, you can mount it on the front of your car.
Perfect.
This is an indestructible broad fork, and a broad fork loosens the soil to 14 inches, and it's really easy to use.
And as I walk here, and I'm doing so because there's no gardens being planted at the moment, the soil is very fluffy. It seems
Yes.
like you've aerated it and
That's
you've
right.
used this fork.
Spring and fall of last year when I put in garden beds, it's still fluffy from that.
Wow.
You know, the soil holds that looseness, but you can go through and loosen an area like that.
Well, that's badass.
It works.
I see some of the potatoes that have been randomly harvested. Nice.
Yep, that's a great tool.
Is this another moringa?
This is, yeah. These
Holy
moringas
smokes.
Here, you see how tall they get? They got this tall since spring of this year.
Wow.
I protect the base of them.
And you have potatoes
Surrounded again by
growing.
sweet potatoes. Lots of sweet potatoes. And then this is just cover crops here that I threw in.
Okay.
Again, it normally looks a lot more beautiful this time of year.
Oh, well, I'm sure nobody's
letting it all
complaining.
go.
Yeah.
Back here, step over the squash vine.
Sure.
This is mostly cassava. This is my emergency calories in the ground.
And it tastes good. I love cassava. I love the taste of cassava.
It's good stuff. It's so easy to grow.
Yeah.
This will all freeze to the ground, but then the next year, you know, you can pull it up again. But there's roots all through here. We could probably find some, like right there. See, there's some yucca right there. That's a smaller root. Smaller roots on both sides. By next year, those will be huge roots like that.
And you'll
big
harvest
around.
them. You'll make mashed potatoes or mashed yucca. You make them in a shepherd's
yucca.
pie,
Oh,
fried. There are endless possibilities. It's one of the better tasting starch vegetables that you can grow.
Yeah, and once you get them started, you just cut these pieces of branches up and stick them in the ground and grow
Right.
new ones. Super easy, and they just take care of the area. They keep the weeds down and
Very cool.
keep it under control.
Very cool.
And it's a good place for the kids to go play and hide and
Yeah, exactly.
sports
There's
and stuff.
There's something to be said about that, and one of the themes that David and I both really enjoy is the theme of self-sustainability, and that also factors into not just your food, but your mental self-sustainability, not relying on government schools and other disinformation from the media. You homeschool your children, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's a big thing around here, and I think homeschooling is great unto itself, but when you factor in this sort of environment, I really feel like that they can only benefit even more so from it. In other words, they're really living life in accordance with nature, the same sort of permaculture philosophy
Yeah.
being taught in a homeschool setting that you could never get from the government schools. Now I see some berries here, and I have a feeling these are, considering these ones that are ripe
Yeah,
here,
help yourself. Those
are blackberries.
They're mulberry.
Mulberries.
They
Oh,
look just like a blackberry.
oh, you're right. Now that I see it, they
it's
are
like a blackberry that
mulberries.
grows on a tree.
They are
And
mulberries.
people say, I don't know what a mulberry tastes like. I say,
Oh,
well,
they're delicious.
Oh, it's good. It's like a
They're amazing.
blackberry without seeds. It grows on a tree. We got 2 years. This tree was 2 years old. It's about half this size. It's about 4 years old now. I counted the harvest I took off of it. I took 6 gallons of berries
Wow.
off of this tree and froze it. And then I did the calculations, and I realized that was about $250 or more worth of organic berries from the store.
Well, you can't buy mulberries in the store because they're not as sturdy. They're far more
Yeah,
perishable.
you can't transport them very long. They bruise easily. But we put them in bags and put them in the freezer. And that doesn't count the couple of gallons the kids ate from the lower branches.
Oh, that's great. That's
2-year-old
great.
was out the door every morning going and, he's
Yeah.
waiting at the back door when we get up.
Ready
We
for
open the
those-
door right to the tree.
Yep. We planted some in our property as well. I'm looking forward to the fruits that those
That's great.
trees
You'll get
bear.
fruits in the spring.
Cool.
That's how fast
We
they
have a
grow.
dwarf variety that I bought from a nursery that I'm
Right.
excited to learn about. It's, some
Not very big.
concoction that they made. Yeah, this tree's not that big at all. Look at
No,
that.
It's easy to keep under control. This here, you can see I've thrown compost on the ground and egg
Nice.
cartons and everything. When I don't like how ugly it looks, I come and I take a wheelbarrow full of mulch before
And then
I
you
do a
cover it
tour,
all.
and I cover it all up. But there's a reason to it. The keeping the ground like this helps drive the nematodes out. And this is a peach tree, and
Right.
they're very susceptible to nematodes.
Is this a Florida peach by chance?
These peaches I started from seed.
Okay, wow.
And they produce awesome big sweet peaches. It was from a Tropic Beauty peach, which was bred about 30 years ago, University of Florida variety.
So this tree produces. Right now
This
it's
tree,
dormant, but it
yeah,
does produce.
It started producing at 1.5 years old. We got a half a dozen peaches from a pit. Peaches grow like a vegetable. I was so blown away by how fast that tree produced.
All right, I'm zooming in now on what
more
seems to
yams
be
up
a
there.
yam.
Yep.
So those are the
More
yams
yams.
growing as a companion plant, making the most out of the space you have here as well.
Exactly. Yep. And I usually garden underneath the base of these trees too.
Very cool.
So they're, I mean, for a, let's see, 3-year-old tree, it's a heck of a tree. Especially,
Beautiful.
you know, I germinated the pits in the fridge and then planted them out here.
Oh, neat.
This one's been grafted a couple of times too. You can see some of my grafts. There's nectarine and other things that have been tacked onto here.
Will that work?
It works. It works.
No way.
Nectarines are actually the same species as peaches.
That makes sense. They're stone fruit, right?
And you can actually, I've grafted peaches and nectarines and big cultivated plums onto our native Chickasaw plum, which is a wild one that grows in the woods.
Okay.
I've even taken pieces of peaches and gone along the side of the road where there's an empty lot and I see a couple of wild plums in there, graft on a couple of branches, and they'll produce peaches on that wild plum rootstock. So a little bit of guerrilla gardening.
Nice. Look at this guy.
That's a type of citrus. It's the most cold hardy variety. It makes a super
Look at
sour,
these claws.
almost inedible. They call it flying dragon.
That is really
Very
cool.
strange plant.
That is really cool looking. Look at the bottom here. Wow. Oh, cool.
See, there's a lot going on, and it's you know, this is just a piece of it. There's when we had cabbages and everything last year, we grew about 100 cabbages out here, a bunch of heads of broccoli and that sort of thing. Planted at the right time of the year. Here you plant in the fall, and they grow all the way through the winter. And we had salads all winter, and cabbages and carrots and all that good stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, David the Good, thesurvivalgardener.com.
That's it. Yeah, thank you.
We never stop learning here. There's something else we want to show you.
Okay, right here, this is one of the yams. It's called Name yam. This is, you cut these things into pieces and plant them. They're a lot like a white potato, but these are the vines. I mentioned these when we were out front, and that's what the root looks like. I pulled this one the other night, and it's delicious. Very easy to grow, especially compared to Idaho potatoes.
Wow. Would you eat one of those?
Yep.
You would?
All right, good man.
I will eat one after.
You will?
They're good.
Okay, good.